All right, so I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about the state of Total War Warhammer 3 right now. Someone called my attention to this video by Legend, and I'm going to play just the very beginning of it, but this is not a reaction video to his video. Well, it is in a tiny little degree, but I'm just kind of using his video here in the background as an example. And there's a couple of other videos that I have watched that a few other people have posted as well, pointing out some of the issues in Omens of Destruction. And I think it's great, first of all, that people are pointing out these issues in Omens of Destruction. But what I wanted to do is just spend a couple of minutes talking about my impressions about the state of the game. So I'm going to go ahead and start out and let him do like maybe 30 seconds or so. I think it's important to get this conversation started here.
Legend of Total War here, and today I'm going to be talking about Skulltaker's campaign and how utterly broken it is, pretty much on a comical level. I'm not sitting here complaining about it by any means, because this stuff is like geared right up my alley. It's got so many little cheeses, big cheeses, massive exploits, all this kind of stuff that just seems like Creative Assembly made this specifically for Legend of Total War. And if that was the case, which it definitely isn't, thanks, this is great. But it's not really in line with a lot of their design ethos a lot of the time, especially when they nerf fun stuff because it can be abused, but then they design a campaign like this that is literally just game abuse the whole way through. In fact, it's so egregious here that players who don't like to abuse the systems, it's pretty much unavoidable. Like you will be snowballing so quickly, even if you're trying not to, because of just like the campaign mechanics here. So I want to just go over it. And
okay, I think that's good enough to kind of give the basic impression. I'm going to let this play a little bit in the background, but I'm reducing the volume on it because going on, he's obviously going to get into some of the specifics. And I will say this: I haven't watched the entire video. I watched about half of it, and he's correct. Don't get me wrong; he's absolutely correct in that there are some design features of the Skulltaker campaign that are clearly very abusable. And it's not great that they have designed the campaign that is this easily abusable. Having said that, I am going to say that I have mixed feelings about the state of the game right now and Omens of Destruction. I don't think it's as bad as this video would lead you to believe. I'm going to mention some of the other videos that I saw in the last few days as well, talking about some of the problems with damage. Particularly splash damage. I'm not convinced the problem is 100% splash damage. It looks to me like there's a little bit more than that going on there. I don't know exactly what the issue is, but it's very clear that, at least in some circumstances, monstrous units are underperforming. There's campaign issues like this one. I saw a really excellent video by oh boy, I don't remember now who it was, but it was talking about the Ogre campaign and just the absolute ridiculousness of the gold rewards that you get in the new Ogre campaign. That really kind of it causes what feels like some major imbalances, like the old Ogre legendary lords. You've got the Greasus and Scrag, that their campaigns are just so far behind the new one now that it's not. It's not at all balanced. And balance is something to obviously, subjectively argue about. I don't personally believe that it's important that every campaign be balanced. I think it's perfectly fine that some are more difficult than others. In fact, I think it's a good thing. But, is it balanced the way that CA wanted it to be? Probably not. Then there's issues that were pointed out as well. Things like you can build a camp that's got tons and tons of food, but it can't provide said food to a lord that is literally standing right next to the camp, which is kind of the whole point of having camps, is to be able to supply your armies. So the fact that mechanic feels kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say broken. It might be working the way that it's designed to, but if so, it's designed poorly, because there are it's not working the way that realistically it should, basically, is what it comes down to. And it's also not working the way that a player would have a reasonable expectation that it should work. It makes me concerned, because coming off of Thrones of Decay, which I thought was the best DLC that we've had for this game, and it kind of felt like CA had turned a corner. And the problems that I'm seeing right now with both the obvious problem with monstrous units, with some of the design decisions that went into the campaign, they're very concerning. It makes me feel like, I don't know, maybe the layoffs at CA have just caused them to not be able to do enough quality testing. Maybe some of these design issues. I mean, games have design issues. You know, it happens in every game. Well, I shouldn't say every game, but it happens in, in a lot of games. Even really good games sometimes have design issues that have to turn around and be addressed later on. So, these things are not the end of the world. But it is concerning to see so many of them pop up. It makes me question, did CA not really do a very good job of reviewing their designs? Did they not? I mean, I'm a little surprised because, a lot of the creators did have early access to this and presumably provided feedback. And so for some of these design decisions to, to make their way into the game post-launch, makes me wonder either they didn't get the feedback that I would have expected them to get, or else they didn't. They ignored the feedback, or they got the feedback too late to be able to react to it, which is not a good sign if your development cycle doesn't allow you time to react to feedback. So I don't know exactly what the issue is. I don't have any insider knowledge of the workings at CA, but I do know this kind of reminds me a little bit of the initial launch of the Realms of Chaos, where there were some design issues that were readily obvious to people, and CA kind of seemed to have developed the game with blinders on, and maybe possibly even were genuinely surprised by the reaction that they got. So there's clearly a little something wrong. Having said all that, I do think that the combat issues are going to get patched. I'm a little surprised they haven't gotten patched already, but hot fixes, they're a little unpredictable in terms of how long they take. It seems like a fairly significant problem that they've got with monstrous infantry or monstrous units right now. That it's leading to a big enough deal that I would hope that they would address it with a hot fix as opposed to a patch that might take a little while to develop. But again, not knowing exactly what's causing the problem, it's impossible to really say how big of a deal it is from a coding perspective and then a testing perspective to make sure that it's fixed without having screwed up anything else. Like I said, I do think there's a little bit more going on there than just the splash damage. But splash damage may be part of it. Anyway, so I do feel like some of these things are likely to get fixed right away. Some of the bigger design issues are a little bit more concerning to me because those feel like long-term things that would take longer to fix, or quite frankly might never get fixed. Maybe these are just design failures. It wouldn't be the first time that CA has, some design failures that just don't ever really get addressed, and that would be pretty disappointing. I'm not a huge player of the Ogres anyway. It would be very disappointing if they don't address some of the things that have been pointed out in that campaign, but overall, it's not going to stop me playing this game completely. So let's talk about that for a second, because everybody knows, I've mentioned many times what a huge fan of this game I am, and I still am. I do feel like sometimes game commentary, game criticism is over the top, that we take games that are just extremely fun and we nitpick about the little things in it and ignore all the great things that the game still has. And if a game is still fun, then I'm probably still going to play it. And this game is still fun as far as I'm concerned. I am definitely not happy about what Legend is pointing out here in terms of Skull Taker. I do think it's an exaggeration. I think he uses some hyperbole here. I think he's got a lot of really good points, and I'm absolutely not disagreeing with his points. But when it comes to cheese, and granted, I haven't watched the whole video, partly because he's probably going to talk about some things that I'd rather not know about. But I did watch the beginning of this video, so I know that he's deliberately setting up his campaign here to be able to cheese the heck out of it, and that's fine. If you are a player who enjoys this type of thing, cheesing the game, then then that video is perfect for you. He's definitely talking through some ways to cheese the Skull Taker campaign. That's not me. As I've mentioned many times before, I'm basically the opposite of Legend when it comes to playing this game. I don't like abusing the AI, and not just in this game, in most games that I play. Quite frankly, most games can be abused. An awful lot of games are figuring out ways that the game engine works, where if you really want to, you can abuse it and become uber powerful. And that's fine if that's your thing. I don't like speed running. I don't like cheesing mechanics. I don't like exploiting AI. To me, it breaks the immersion factor of games. I feel like the majority of players out there don't agree with me. I feel like I'm not very well aligned with most players in that sense. Most players, I see a game, I'm just going to use as an example because it's really popular right now. Path of Exile 2 just came out. Path of Exile 1 was this way. Most players are speedrunners. They want to burn through the game as fast as they can, become uber powerful. They want to be able to do a walking simulator where they're just walking through the maps and they're just destroying the enemies with one or two button clicks. And that's fine for some people. That's usually not the sort of thing that appeals to me. I usually have a lot more fun with games if I'm taking my time and trying to play the game the way that the game was meant to be played. And I feel like Warhammer 3 is still a game that is very enjoyable if you play it the way it was meant to be played. There are a few things that bother me about it, and I'm still working on another video that are my top issues with this game, because there's some things that just they're not realistic, or they're just not fun, and they are design failures. I'll go ahead and mention my biggest one that exists right now, which is the combat animations against a lord that is running away drive me absolutely insane. It's probably exacerbated by playing on Legendary Very Hard difficulty, because there are certain bonuses that certain cheats that the AI gets. But it's extremely frustrating to watch a level 1 wizard who's not supposed to be he's supposed to be a glass cannon. Wizards are not supposed to be strong, and when they've got enemies all around them in this game. And it's very frustrating to watch. You get army losses. You fight a good battle, you get army losses, the enemy lord starts to run away, and you just can't kill him. He's just walking through your units, running off the map. And I think it's mostly got to do with the combat animations are so poorly done in some cases, where if a unit is trying to walk away, your attacks don't go off, or they go off and they just blatantly miss. And things like that I find to be pretty broken, and I do wish CA would fix it. As I pointed out before, until they fix the combat animation so that doesn't happen, I wish they would just change the design feature that basically says to get really good rewards out of a battle, you have to kill the enemy lord. Just change that. Just make it so that you get better, that it's only a slight benefit to kill the enemy lord, that you get better results from not killing the enemy lord, but just by winning the battle. And you don't, at that point, then motivate the player to try so hard to have to kill the enemy lord, because it's not fun to fight a 5-minute battle where where you win the battle in 5 minutes, and then you have to double the length of time of the battle because you spend the next 5 minutes just trying to run down the lord who ultimately gets away anyway. It's a non-fun experience, and that's what I think they should be focusing on, is taking out some of the design decisions or some of the bugs in the game that lead to these non-fun moments. All right, so back to the main point, which is when I play a game like this, I don't go out of my way to learn these exploits like Legend is pointing out here. Again, I want to be very clear. Legend is a far better Warhammer 3 player than I am. He would absolutely destroy me if we were to play against each other, for example. And his channel is 100 times bigger than mine, probably much more than 100 times bigger than mine. So he obviously is doing something right with his videos. Having said that, there's more than one way to play this game and other games. And I do think, I know a lot of people have made these comments on my videos. There are those of us who don't like playing games to abuse the AI, to cheese the tactics, to exploit things. So I don't go out of my way to do so. I don't go out of my way to learn about them, and I feel like a lot of players kind of play games this way because that's what they see the most videos of. That's what everybody else is doing. And so I would encourage a lot of people to kind of sit back and go, is this more fun for me, or am I doing it just because that seems to be the meta? That's what everybody else is doing. Because I think there's a lot of fun that's being left on the table, if that expression makes sense. There's a lot of people who would have more fun playing these games if they don't go out of their way to exploit them. And I feel like this Skulltaker campaign may very well, the one that I'm doing on my channel, it may get to the point where it's abusing the AI, but I've not gotten to that point yet, and it's been a fun campaign even without having gotten to that point. Now granted, I'm not all that far into it. I'm 3 hours or so into the campaign, and I use the mods to slow down the overall pacing of it. But I think there's still a lot of fun to be had in the game, despite these issues that other people are pointing out. So I'm by no means excusing the problems, as I pointed out at the very beginning. I feel like there's something rotten in Kislev, if anybody gets that reference. There's something wrong going on at CA where they've allowed this many problems to get into the launch version of the DLC. I personally feel like they don't spend enough time finishing the existing bugs in the game as opposed to the amount of time that they spend developing the new DLCs, which is releasing new content, and I understand why they do it. They don't make money by releasing bug fixes. They do make money by releasing new legendary lords and things like that. So it is, after all, this is capitalism at its finest. Companies are going to do what they're motivated to do in order to make money. So I understand why it is the way that it is. I just don't love it. I wish they would spend more time patching the existing problems, fixing the existing design issues, to address the not fun aspects of the game. But I get it. I understand why it is the way it is. Having said all that, I'm going to continue to play this game because I think it's still one of the best games I've ever played, even with these issues in it. I do feel like these issues are unfortunate when they pop up. Most of them will get addressed, probably in fairly short order. I do expect monstrous units to get patched or hotfixed here pretty soon. Could be wrong about it, obviously, but that's my expectation. For the most part, there are these exploits that pop up in the game over and over again, and they're not hard. It's not hard to just not use them. It's not hard to not exploit a game. Again, not criticizing anybody's play style. If you want to abuse the game, if that's what you find fun, or even part of the time you want to do it before you then go on to not abusing it. However you want to play is fine. Play the way that you have the most fun with. I'm just saying, if you're interested in maximizing your fun in a way that plays the game the way it's intended to be played, that feels more immersive, that experience is still available. Okay, anyway, at this point, I'm probably repeating myself. So hopefully y'all get the point. I do welcome feedback. I'm not saying that mine is the only point of view or the best point of view, but I think it is an important point of view because I do think there's quite a few players that don't really think about this game from the perspective that I do, which is more about looking for all the immersion that is still available to play, despite the fact that some of these other flaws have crept into the game. So I think I'll go ahead and leave it at that. Hopefully everybody understands what my basic point is. I do welcome criticism. I know that I've probably said some things that people don't agree with, and that's fine. Feel free to disagree with me. I'd prefer that you do it respectfully, but absolutely I am okay with the disagreement, and I'd like to see a discussion about this because the game is certainly good enough to warrant a lengthy discussion about ways to improve it. And my channel's still fairly small; it's growing, but you never know what CA is looking at. Maybe maybe these discussions are something that CA will take into consideration moving forward. And I think this game is going to be around for a few more years. At least I hope it will be. So I think there's always value in having a discussion about ways to improve the game, not just take a big old dump all over it. So, all right. I think I will leave it at that. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Leave your comments. I do welcome that discussion, and I will see you all in the next video.